Marcus Chen sat in the cold metal chair, his wrists bound by electromagnetic cuffs that hummed with an angry blue glow. The interrogation room aboard the UEF battleship Dominion was sterile and unwelcoming, with harsh white lights that made his dark skin look pale and sickly. He kept his eyes fixed on the table in front of him, trying not to think about how everything had gone so terribly wrong. 3 days ago, Marcus had been a free man working as a cargo handler on Kepler Station. Now he was being treated like a terrorist, accused of sabotaging human supply lines and feeding information to alien forces. The charges were serious enough to earn him a one-way trip to a prison colony, or worse. The door hissed open, and Captain Sarah Reynolds entered with 2 security guards flanking her. She was a tall woman with steel grey hair and eyes that seemed to cut right through a person. Marcus had heard stories about her reputation for being ruthless with traitors and collaborators. His stomach clenched as she took the seat across from him. Marcus Chen, age 28, born on Mars Colony 7, she read from her tablet. Former technical specialist, currently employed as a cargo handler. No criminal record until 3 days ago. She looked up at him with those cold eyes. Want to tell me how someone with your background ended up mixed up with alien sympathizers? Marcus finally looked up, meeting her gaze. I'm not mixed up with anyone, Captain. I think there's been a mistake. Captain Reynolds laughed, but there was no humor in it. A mistake? We found encrypted alien communication devices in your personal quarters. We have surveillance footage of you meeting with known collaborators. We have testimony from other workers that you've been asking suspicious questions about our defense systems. She leaned forward. The only mistake here is that we didn't catch you sooner. Those devices weren't mine, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. Someone planted them there. I've never betrayed humanity, Captain. I would never betray my own species. Your own species? Reynolds stood up and began pacing around the small room. That's interesting, because according to your file, you spent 2 years living in the neutral zones. 2 years in territories where humans and aliens mix freely. 2 years where you could have been turned, recruited, brainwashed. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. He knew this would come up eventually. Those 2 years had been the hardest of his life, but they had also taught him more about the galaxy than he could have learned anywhere else. I was studying xenobiology and alien cultures. It was a legitimate academic program approved by the Colonial Education Board. Studying alien cultures, Reynolds repeated mockingly. Learning to think like them, to sympathize with their cause. And now, conveniently, you're back in human space just as our war effort intensifies. The war hadn't even started when I came back, Marcus protested. I returned to human space 6 months before first contact with the Zephyrian Empire. How could I have known? One of the security guards, a young man with nervous eyes, shifted uncomfortably. Marcus noticed him glancing at something on Marcus's right arm, something partially visible beneath his rolled-up sleeve. The guard seemed confused, like he was trying to work out a puzzle in his head. Captain Reynolds noticed the guard's distraction and followed his gaze. Her eyes narrowed as she caught a glimpse of the tattoo on Marcus's forearm. What's that marking on your arm, Chen? Marcus instinctively tried to pull his sleeve down, but the electromagnetic cuffs made the movement awkward and limited. It's just a tattoo, Captain. Nothing important. Nothing important? Reynolds grabbed his arm roughly and pushed the sleeve up, revealing an intricate design that seemed to blend geometric patterns with organic flowing lines. The tattoo was done in deep blues and silvers, and it seemed to shimmer slightly under the harsh lights. This doesn't look like any human artwork I've ever seen. The young security guard stepped closer, his face pale. Captain, I think I recognize that design. Reynolds turned to him sharply. Speak up, Corporal Martinez. What do you know about this? Corporal Martinez swallowed hard, looking between Marcus and the captain. My brother served in the 23rd Recon Division, ma'am. He was part of the deep space missions before the war started. He used to send me pictures and stories from his deployments. He paused, staring at the tattoo. He showed me something like this once, said it was important, but he couldn't tell me why because of security clearances. What exactly did your brother tell you? Reynolds demanded. Just that certain markings meant something special in human military operations. Something about honor and sacrifice. Martinez looked confused, but he said most people wouldn't understand what they were looking at, and that was by design. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling a mixture of relief and dread. He had hoped it wouldn't come to this, that he could resolve the situation without revealing things that were meant to stay hidden, but now it seemed like he had no choice. Captain Reynolds studied the tattoo more carefully, her expression shifting from suspicion to uncertainty. The design was clearly sophisticated, with layers of meaning that weren't immediately obvious. The way it was executed suggested it wasn't just decorative art, but something with deeper significance. "Where did you get this tattoo, Chen?" she asked, her voice slightly less hostile than before. Marcus opened his eyes and looked directly at her. "I can't tell you that, Captain." "Not without proper authorization. You're not in a position to make demands about authorization," Reynolds snapped. "You're facing charges of treason and collaboration with enemy forces. I understand that, Captain. But there are protocols that have to be followed, clearances that have to be verified. This tattoo represents something that goes beyond your current security level." Marcus kept his voice calm and respectful. "I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm trying to follow the rules that I swore to uphold." The room fell silent. Reynolds stared at him with a mixture of frustration and growing curiosity. The idea that a suspected traitor might actually have higher security clearances than she did was both irritating and intriguing. Corporal Martinez cleared his throat nervously. "Captain, maybe we should contact Admiral Harrison. If this is related to classified operations, he would know what protocols to follow." Reynolds considered this for a long moment. Admiral Harrison was the commanding officer of the entire fleet, a man with clearances that went all the way to the top of the military hierarchy. If there was something special about Marcus Chen that she didn't know about, Harrison would be the one to ask. "Fine," she said finally. "We'll contact the Admiral. But until then, you stay in detention, Chen. And if this turns out to be some elaborate bluff to buy yourself time, you'll find out just how unforgiving I can be." Marcus nodded. "I understand, Captain." "Thank you for following proper procedures." As the guards prepared to escort him back to his cell, Marcus caught Corporal Martinez staring at the tattoo again. The young man looked troubled, like he was remembering something his brother had told him but couldn't quite piece it together. The detention cell was small and cramped, with a narrow bunk and a tiny window that looked out into the vast darkness of space. Marcus lay on the bunk and stared at the tattoo on his arm, thinking about the events that had led him to this moment. 2 years in the neutral zones had changed him in ways that most humans couldn't understand. He had learned that the galaxy was far more complex and dangerous than anyone in human space realized. He had seen things that would give most people nightmares, and he had done things that would probably earn him a court-martial if the full truth ever came out. But he had also learned about honor, sacrifice, and the true meaning of protecting humanity's future. The tattoo on his arm wasn't just artwork or even just a symbol. It was a reminder of promises made and duties accepted. It represented a commitment that went beyond normal military service, beyond normal understanding. Hours passed before he heard footsteps in the corridor outside his cell. The electromagnetic lock disengaged with a soft chime, and Captain Reynolds appeared in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "The Admiral wants to see you," she said simply. "Now." Marcus stood up, noticing that she seemed different somehow. Less hostile, more uncertain. Whatever conversation she had had with Admiral Harrison had clearly affected her worldview in some significant way. The walk to the Admiral's quarters took them through several sections of the massive battleship. Marcus noticed that some of the crew members they passed looked at him with curiosity rather than suspicion, as if word had somehow spread that he might not be what he appeared to be. Admiral Harrison's office was impressive, with a large viewport that offered a stunning view of the fleet formation. The Admiral himself was a distinguished man in his 60s, with silver hair and eyes that suggested he had seen more than his share of secrets and sorrows. "Marcus Chen," the Admiral said without looking up from his desk. "It's been a long time." Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. "Admiral Harrison, I didn't know you were commanding this fleet. There are a lot of things you don't know, Marcus. Just like there are a lot of things that Captain Reynolds doesn't know." Harrison finally looked up, his gaze moving immediately to the tattoo on Marcus's arm. "Show me." Without hesitation, Marcus rolled up his sleeve fully, revealing the complete design. Admiral Harrison studied it carefully, his expression growing more serious with each passing second. "Captain Reynolds," the Admiral said without taking his eyes off the tattoo, "what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels of military intelligence. You will not discuss it with anyone without my direct authorization. Is that understood?" "Yes, sir," Reynolds replied, though Marcus could hear the confusion in her voice. Harrison stood up and walked over to a secure cabinet in the corner of his office. He entered a complex code and retrieved a thick file marked with security classifications that Marcus recognized as being well above normal military clearances. 3 years ago, the Admiral began, we discovered that humanity was not alone in the galaxy, but we also discovered that we were facing threats far more dangerous than we initially realized. There were forces out there that could destroy our entire civilization without breaking a sweat. He opened the file and pulled out several photographs and documents. We needed people who could operate in that environment, who could understand alien cultures and mindsets well enough to protect our interests. We needed people who could make the hard choices that normal soldiers couldn't make. Marcus watched as the Admiral showed Captain Reynolds photographs of alien worlds, detailed intelligence reports, and mission summaries that painted a picture of operations far beyond anything the regular military was involved in. Marcus Chen was recruited into a program that doesn't officially exist, Harrison continued. For 2 years he operated in the most dangerous regions of known space, gathering intelligence, preventing conflicts, and protecting human interests in ways that we can never acknowledge publicly. Reynolds looked between the Admiral and Marcus, her understanding of the situation clearly shifting. Sir, are you saying that he's not a traitor? I'm saying that Marcus Chen has done more to protect humanity than most people will ever know. That tattoo on his arm marks him as one of fewer than a dozen people who have the clearances, training, and experience to handle our most sensitive operations. Harrison's voice grew stern. And the fact that he's been arrested and charged with treason represents a massive failure in our security protocols. Marcus felt a weight lifting from his shoulders, but also a new concern settling in. If his cover had been blown this badly, it meant that something had gone very wrong with the mission parameters. Admiral, he said carefully, if my identity has been compromised, then we need to consider the possibility that the intelligence network has been penetrated. Harrison nodded grimly. That's exactly what we need to discuss. But first, Captain Reynolds needs to understand what she's dealing with here. The Admiral pulled out another photograph, this one showing Marcus in the neutral zones, meeting with alien representatives. But instead of looking like a traitor passing information, the context made it clear that he was operating as an official representative of human interests. Every meeting, every contact, every piece of information that Marcus gathered was vital to our understanding of the political situation in this region of space, Harrison explained. The devices found in his quarters weren't alien communication equipment for passing secrets. They were specialized intelligence gathering tools that we developed specifically for his mission. Captain Reynolds looked stunned. Sir, why wasn't I briefed on any of this? If we had operatives working in this area, I should have been informed. Because the fewer people who know about these operations, the safer they are. Marcus wasn't supposed to be anywhere near your operational area. The fact that he's here suggests that something has gone very wrong indeed. Marcus stepped forward. Admiral, I was pulled back because of the intelligence I gathered about Zephyrian battle plans. They're not just trying to establish territory in this region. They're preparing for something much larger, something that could threaten Earth itself. The room fell silent as the implications of this statement sank in. If Marcus was right, then the current conflict was just the beginning of a much larger war, one that humanity might not be prepared to fight. Admiral Harrison walked to the large viewport, staring out at the formation of human warships that stretched across the darkness of space. Each vessel represented thousands of lives depending on the decisions made in rooms like this one. The weight of that responsibility was evident in the lines on his weathered face. Marcus, tell Captain Reynolds what you discovered in the neutral zones, he said without turning around. Marcus took a deep breath, organizing his thoughts. The information he was about to share had the potential to change the course of the entire war, and he needed to present it clearly and convincingly. Captain, what do you know about the Zephyrian Empire's military structure? Marcus asked. Reynolds frowned. Standard intelligence reports indicate they have a hierarchical command system similar to our own, with regional commanders overseeing fleets and ground forces. They appear to favor hit-and-run tactics and seem particularly interested in our supply lines. That's what they want us to think, Marcus replied. But the reality is much more complex and much more dangerous. The Zephyrians we're fighting aren't actually the main force of their empire. They're essentially a scouting expedition, testing our capabilities and mapping our defenses. Captain Reynolds felt her stomach drop. If what Marcus was saying was true, then every battle they had fought, every victory they had achieved, was essentially meaningless in the larger context of the conflict. During my time in the neutral zones, I was able to establish contact with several independent alien groups that had previously encountered the Zephyrian Empire. What I learned from them painted a very different picture of what we're facing. Marcus moved to the Admiral's desk, where Harrison had spread out star charts and intelligence reports. It pointed to a region of space far beyond the current conflict zone. The main Zephyrian fleet is here, approximately 18 months away at current travel speeds. It consists of over 3,000 warships, each one larger and more advanced than anything we've encountered so far. The force we're currently fighting represents less than 5% of their total military capability. Reynolds stared at the charts, trying to process the implications. That's impossible! Our intelligence networks would have detected a fleet that large moving through space. Not if they're using technology we don't understand, Marcus continued. The Zephyrians have developed a form of faster-than-light travel that doesn't require the same energy signatures as our jump drives. They can move massive fleets without triggering our long-range sensors. Admiral Harrison finally turned away from the viewport. Show her the biological data, Marcus. Marcus pulled out a secured data tablet and activated a holographic display. The image that appeared showed detailed anatomical scans of Zephyrian physiology, but there were anomalies that didn't match the standard intelligence reports. This is where things get really concerning, Marcus said. The Zephyrians we've captured and studied aren't representative of their entire species. They're genetically modified soldiers bred specifically for long-range operations away from their homeworld. What do you mean, genetically modified? Reynolds asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. Their natural physiology is adapted for much higher gravity environments than what we've encountered. They're also significantly more intelligent and physically capable than the soldiers we've been fighting. The ones we're facing now are essentially the equivalent of expendable troops, sent ahead to weaken our defenses and gather intelligence. The holographic display shifted to show comparative analysis between the captured Zephyrians and theoretical projections of their unmodified counterparts. The differences were startling. The true Zephyrians appeared to be nearly twice the size of the ones they had been fighting, with enhanced cranial capacity and muscle density that suggested capabilities far beyond what humans had encountered. Captain Reynolds sank into a chair, the full weight of the situation becoming clear to her. How long have you known about this? I've suspected it for months, Admiral Harrison replied. But Marcus's intelligence confirmed our worst fears. We're not just fighting a war for territory or resources. We're fighting the advanced scouts of an invasion force that could end human civilization. Sir, why hasn't this information been shared with the other fleet commanders? Surely they need to know what they're really facing. Because panic and despair won't help us win this war, Harrison said firmly. If word of the true size of the Zephyrian force gets out, we could face mass desertions, political chaos, and the complete collapse of our war effort before the main fleet even arrives. Marcus stepped forward. But there is hope, Captain. During my time in the neutral zones, I didn't just gather intelligence about the Zephyrian threat. I also made contact with potential allies. He activated another section of the holographic display, showing star charts marked with the territories of various alien civilizations. There are at least 6 other species that have had encounters with the Zephyrian Empire over the past century. Most of them have been forced to abandon their home systems and flee to the outer regions of the galaxy. Refugees? Reynolds said, beginning to understand. Exactly. But refugees with advanced technology, detailed knowledge of Zephyrian tactics, and a very strong motivation to see the Empire defeated. The problem is that most of these species don't trust humans, and they certainly don't trust our military. Admiral Harrison moved back to his desk and retrieved another file. This is where Marcus's unique background becomes crucial to our survival. His time in the neutral zones wasn't just about gathering intelligence. He was building relationships, establishing trust, and laying the groundwork for potential alliances. The tattoo on my arm isn't just a symbol of my service to humanity, Marcus explained. It's also a mark of acceptance among several of these refugee species. It shows that I've undergone certain trials and made certain commitments that they respect. Reynolds examined the tattoo more closely, noticing details she had missed before. The way the geometric patterns flowed into organic designs suggested a fusion of different artistic traditions, as if multiple cultures had contributed to its creation. What kind of trials? She asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment, and Admiral Harrison gestured for him to continue. Some experiences are difficult to explain to people who haven't been outside human space, Captain. The refugee species I worked with have very different concepts of honor, courage, and sacrifice than we do. To earn their trust, I had to prove myself according to their standards, not ours. That's why the charges against him are so dangerous, Harrison added. If word gets back to our potential allies that we arrested and accused him of treason, it could destroy years of careful diplomacy. These species already have reason to distrust humans. Treating one of our most important ambassadors as a traitor would confirm their worst suspicions about us. The implications were staggering. Not only had they nearly destroyed a crucial intelligence operation, but they had also risked alienating the only potential allies humanity might have in the coming war. "Sir," Reynolds said slowly, "what exactly are you asking me to do? First, all charges against Marcus are being dropped immediately. Second, you're going to help us figure out how our security was compromised so badly that our own operatives are being framed for treason. And third, you're going to be briefed into the Alliance program so that you can help protect future operations." Marcus looked between the Admiral and the Captain. "There's something else we need to consider. The fact that I was framed suggests that the Zephyrians know more about our intelligence operations than we realized. They may have identified other operatives, other safe houses, other allies." "You think we have a leak?" Reynolds asked. "I think we have something worse than a leak," Marcus replied grimly. "I think we have active Zephyrian agents operating within our own military structure." The room fell silent as this possibility sank in. The idea that enemy agents had penetrated human military intelligence was terrifying enough, but if they had done so while humanity was still unaware of the true scope of the Zephyrian threat, the implications were catastrophic. Admiral Harrison activated the security locks on his office and pulled up classified personnel files on his computer. "Marcus, I need you to review these files and tell me if you recognize any patterns or anomalies that might indicate enemy infiltration." As Marcus studied the files, Captain Reynolds found herself wrestling with the complete transformation of her understanding of the situation. 3 hours ago, she had been interrogating a suspected traitor. Now she was being briefed into one of the most classified programs in human military history.
"Captain," Admiral Harrison said, noticing her expression, "I know this is a lot to process."
"But I need to know that you understand the stakes here. What we discuss in this room could determine whether humanity survives the next few years." "I understand, sir. But I have to ask, how many other people know about this? How many other operations are out there that I've never heard of?" "Fewer than you might think, and more than you might hope," Harrison replied cryptically. "The nature of this threat requires us to operate with compartmentalized information and limited distribution. It's the only way to minimize the risk of enemy infiltration." Marcus looked up from the personnel files he had been reviewing. "Admiral, I found something. 3 of the officers who were involved in the investigation that led to my arrest have unusual travel patterns in their service records. They've all been rotated through stations that would have given them access to classified information about neutral zone operations." "Show me," Harrison said, moving to look over Marcus's shoulder. The files displayed travel histories, duty assignments, and security clearances for 3 different officers. On the surface, their records looked normal, but when viewed together, a pattern emerged. All 3 had been positioned at key points where they could have accessed information about Marcus's mission and identity. "This is either an incredibly unlikely coincidence, or we're looking at a coordinated infiltration effort," Reynolds observed. "There's one way to find out," Marcus said. "We need to run deep background checks on these officers, including psychological profiles, financial records, and communication histories. If they've been compromised or recruited, there will be signs." Admiral Harrison nodded and began entering commands into his computer. "I'm authorizing a full security investigation into these 3 officers. Captain Reynolds, you'll be leading the investigation. Marcus, you'll be providing consultation and analysis." "Sir, what about the main mission? The alliance building with the refugee species?" Marcus asked. "That becomes even more important now," Harrison replied. "If we do have enemy agents in our ranks, we need allies more than ever. But first, we need to identify and neutralize the immediate threat to our security." Captain Reynolds stood up, her mind racing with the implications of everything she had learned. "Admiral, what do I tell my crew about Marcus? They saw him being arrested and interrogated. They're expecting him to be transferred to a prison facility or executed for treason. You tell them that the charges have been dropped due to new evidence, and that Marcus Chen is now assigned to special operations under direct orders from Fleet Command. Anyone who asks for more details can be told that the matter is classified beyond their clearance level." "And if they don't accept that explanation?" Admiral Harrison's expression grew stern. Then they'll find themselves facing very serious questions about their loyalty and security clearance. We can't afford to have rumors or speculation undermining our operations. Marcus gathered the files he had been reviewing and secured them in the Admiral's safe. Captain, there's something else you should know about the Alliance program. The refugee species I've been working with have technologies that could significantly improve our defensive capabilities. Weapons, shields, faster-than-light communication systems, even medical technologies that could save millions of lives. What's the catch? Reynolds asked, recognizing that such advantages always came with a price. They want proof that humanity can be trusted to use such technologies responsibly. They've seen too many species destroy themselves with advanced weapons or become tyrannical empires that threaten others. They need to believe that we're different. And how do we prove that? Marcus looked at Admiral Harrison, who nodded for him to continue. By showing them that we're willing to make sacrifices to protect innocent life, even when it's not strategically advantageous, by demonstrating that we have the wisdom to know when not to fight and the courage to fight when necessary. The tattoo represents those commitments, Harrison added. Marcus underwent trials that tested his character, his judgment, and his dedication to protecting life, rather than just advancing human interests. It's why they trust him, and why they're willing to consider an alliance with us. Captain Reynolds studied the tattoo again, seeing it with completely new understanding. What kind of trials? The kind that change a person forever, Marcus replied simply. The kind that teach you that survival isn't enough, that some things are more important than living to see another day. As the briefing continued, Reynolds found herself being drawn into a world of secrets, sacrifices, and stakes higher than anything she had ever imagined. The war she thought she was fighting was just the beginning of a much larger conflict, and the enemy they faced was far more dangerous than anyone had realized. But there was also hope. Hidden alliances, advanced technologies, and dedicated people willing to risk everything to protect humanity's future. The question was whether they would have enough time to build those alliances before the main Zephyrian fleet arrived. Admiral Harrison closed the files and looked at both officers seriously. From this moment forward, everything changes. Captain Reynolds, you're now part of the most classified program in human military history. Marcus, you're going back into the field, but this time with full military support and protection. And all of us are going to work together to ensure that humanity survives what's coming. The meeting that had started as an interrogation had become the beginning of a desperate race against time. Outside the viewport, the stars seemed different somehow, no longer distant points of light but potential battlefields in a war that could determine the fate of human civilization. Marcus looked at his tattoo one more time, remembering the challenges he had faced to earn it and the promises he had made to honor it. The real test was just beginning. 2 weeks after the revelation in Admiral Harrison's office, Captain Reynolds stood in the observation deck of the UEF battleship Dominion, watching as 3 sleek alien vessels approached their position. The ships were unlike anything in human space. Their hulls seemed to flow like liquid metal, and energy patterns danced across their surfaces in ways that human technology couldn't replicate. Beside her, Marcus Chen checked his communication equipment one final time. The tattoo on his arm seemed to shimmer more brightly under the alien ship's strange lighting, as if responding to their presence. Over the past 2 weeks, Reynolds had learned that the tattoo was far more than decorative art. It contained encoded information that could only be read by specific alien technologies, serving as both identification and proof of Marcus's commitments to the Alliance. Nervous? Reynolds asked quietly. Marcus smiled, though there was tension in his expression. Terrified would be more accurate. What we're about to attempt has never been done before. 3 different refugee species, meeting together with human military representatives, trying to forge an alliance against an enemy that has defeated all of them before. The investigation into the security breach had yielded disturbing results. 2 of the 3 officers they suspected had indeed been compromised, not by direct Zephyrian recruitment, but through sophisticated psychological manipulation techniques that had taken months to implement. The aliens had identified human personnel with certain vulnerabilities and had gradually influenced their behavior through a combination of targeted disinformation, social pressure, and subtle rewards. The 3rd officer had been completely innocent, which was almost more troubling than the confirmed infiltration. It meant that the Zephyrian intelligence capabilities were sophisticated enough to create false positives that could destroy careers and operations while hiding their real agents. Admiral Harrison sends his regards, Reynolds said, checking her own communication device. He's monitoring from the flagship, but he wants this first meeting to be as informal as possible. The refugee species apparently respond better to smaller, less intimidating groups. They've learned to be very cautious about large military gatherings, Marcus explained. Every one of these species lost their homeworld because they trusted the wrong people at the wrong time. They're not going to make that mistake again. The alien ships had stopped at a respectful distance from the human fleet, maintaining a formation that suggested readiness for either diplomacy or rapid escape. Marcus activated his specialized communication system and began transmitting the coded signals that would identify him to the alien representatives. This is Marcus Chen, speaking for the human delegation. I greet our friends from the Ashanti Collective, the Meridian Republic, and the Wandering Fleet of Korvac. The response came in 3 different languages, filtered through translation systems that converted the complex alien communications into words that humans could understand. Reynolds was amazed by the courtesy and formality of the greetings, which seemed to acknowledge not just Marcus personally, but also the struggles and sacrifices that had brought them all to this moment. We acknowledge Marcus Chen, bearer of the Silver Path, witness to the great sorrow, friend to the lost, came the response from the Ashanti representative. We come in peace to speak of war, in hope to speak of survival. The Meridian Republic honors the invitation of the tattoo bearer, added a second voice. We bring gifts of knowledge and memories of defeat. We hope to transform both into victory. The third voice was deeper, more resonant, carrying undertones that human vocal cords could never produce. The wandering fleet acknowledges the courage of Marcus Chen. We have sailed the dark between stars, seeking those who would stand against the destroyer empire. Today we discover if such allies exist among the young species of Terra. Reynolds felt a chill run down her spine. She had read the intelligence reports about these species, but hearing them speak directly about their losses and their hopes made the reality of the situation much more immediate and personal. Captain, Marcus said softly, they're ready to come aboard, but there are protocols we need to follow. Each species has different requirements for safe interaction with humans. Over the next hour, Reynolds watched as 3 shuttles docked with the Dominion, each bringing representatives from civilizations that had survived the destruction of their homeworlds. The aliens who emerged were unlike anything she had ever imagined. The Ashanti delegate was tall and graceful, with crystalline skin that reflected light in patterns that seemed to convey emotional states. Her movements were precise and elegant, suggesting a species that valued harmony and balance above all else. The Meridian representative was smaller but more robust, with thick grey skin and multiple arms that moved independently of each other. His eyes were large and dark, and he carried himself with the wary alertness of someone who had seen too much conflict. But it was the delegate from the Wandering Fleet who impressed Reynolds the most. Korvac was massive, easily 8 feet tall, with skin that looked like living metal and eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. When he spoke, his voice resonated through the deck plating, and Reynolds could feel the power behind his words. "We gather in the shadow of great danger," Korvac said as the delegates assembled in the ship's main conference room. "The destroyer empire comes, as it has come to our worlds, as it has come to countless others. The question before us is simple. Will we face this threat alone and die alone, or will we stand together and perhaps find a way to survive?" Marcus stepped forward, his tattoo now glowing with a soft blue light that seemed to respond to the presence of the alien delegates. "The human species is young and perhaps naive about the galaxy's dangers, but we are willing to learn, to adapt, and to fight for not just our own survival, but for the survival of all free peoples." The Ashanti delegate, who had introduced herself as Crystal Singer Valine, moved to examine Marcus's tattoo more closely. "The marks you bear speak of trials undertaken and promises made. Tell us, Marcus Chen, what did you sacrifice to earn these symbols?" Reynolds watched as Marcus rolled up his sleeve completely, revealing the full extent of the tattoo. Under the alien ship's lighting, she could see details that hadn't been visible before, layers of meaning woven into the design that told a story she was only beginning to understand. "I spent 6 months on Ashanti refugee stations learning your people's philosophy of harmonic balance," Marcus began. "I underwent the trial of dissolved self, where I had to maintain my consciousness while experiencing the collective memories of those who died when your homeworld fell." Crystal Singer Valen's skin patterns shifted to deeper blues, indicating what Reynolds had learned was a sign of respect and acknowledgement among her people. "I spent 4 months with Meridian military units participating in their guerrilla operations against Zephyrian advanced scouts," Marcus continued. I earned the mark of shared blood by fighting alongside your warriors and proving that humans could be trusted in combat. The Meridian delegate, Commander Thex, raised two of his forearms in a salute that Reynolds recognized from the intelligence briefings as a high honor among his people. And I sailed with the Wandering Fleet for 8 months, learning the deep history of the galaxy and the true scope of the Destroyer Empire's expansion. Marcus concluded. I passed the test of Endless Dark, where I had to navigate between star systems using only traditional methods, proving that I could survive the long journeys that your people have endured. Korvac's metallic skin seemed to ripple with approval. The test of Endless Dark has not been attempted by an alien species in over 3 centuries. That you survived it speaks well of human potential. Captain Reynolds felt a new understanding of what Marcus had sacrificed during his time in the neutral zones. He hadn't just been gathering intelligence, he had been undergoing transformative experiences that had changed him at a fundamental level. The tattoo wasn't just a symbol of his service to humanity, it was proof of his commitment to something larger than any single species. The question now, said Crystal Singer Valen, is whether the human military will honor the commitments that Marcus Chen has made. Will your people truly fight for the survival of all, or will they choose the path of isolation when the cost becomes too high? Admiral Harrison's voice came through the communications system, transmitted from the flagship. Crystal Singer Valen, I give you my word as commander of this fleet that humanity will honor our commitments. We understand that this is bigger than just our survival. We're fighting for the principle that free civilizations should be able to exist without living in fear of conquest and annihilation. Commander Thex leaned forward, his large, dark eyes fixed on the communication system. Words are important, Admiral Harrison, but the Destroyer Empire has taught us that actions matter more. What are you prepared to do to prove human commitment? Reynolds saw Marcus nod slightly, and she realized that this was the moment they had been preparing for. The alien delegates weren't just here to discuss an alliance. They were here to test whether humans were worthy of one. We're prepared to share our defensive technologies and tactical innovations, Admiral Harrison replied. We're prepared to commit military resources to the defense of your refugee populations, and we're prepared to take risks that might not directly benefit humanity if they serve the greater cause of defeating the Zephyrian Empire. That is what we hope to hear, Korvac said, his voice carrying notes of approval. But we must also share what we have learned about the enemy. The Destroyer Empire is not simply a military threat. It is a force that seeks to remake the galaxy according to its vision of perfect order. They do not just conquer civilizations. They absorb them, transforming them into extensions of their own empire. The holographic display in the conference room activated, showing detailed intelligence about Zephyrian conversion technologies. Reynolds watched in horror as the data revealed the true fate of conquered species, not death or slavery, but transformation into something that was no longer recognizably their original species. This is why we call them the Destroyer Empire, Crystal Singer Valen explained. They do not destroy life, but they destroy identity, culture, free will. The beings you have fought are not slaves or soldiers. They are former members of conquered species who have been modified to serve the Empire's purposes. The implications hit Reynolds like a physical blow. Every Zephyrian they had captured or killed had once been a member of a free species, transformed against their will into an enemy of their own former allies. Is there any way to reverse the process? She asked, though she feared the answer. We have tried for decades, Commander Thex replied sadly. The modifications are too extensive, too deeply integrated into their biology and psychology. The individuals they once were are essentially gone forever. Marcus stepped forward. This is why the alliance is so important. We're not just fighting for our own survival, we're fighting to prevent the same fate from befalling our own people. And we're fighting for the billions of beings throughout the galaxy who could face conversion if the Empire continues to expand. The meeting continued for several hours, with the delegates sharing intelligence, technology, and strategic insights that painted a picture of a conflict far more complex than human military leaders had imagined. But they also shared something more valuable: hope. The Destroyer Empire has one significant weakness, Korvac revealed as the discussion neared its end. They cannot convert species that truly understand the value of individual identity and free will. Their technology works by exploiting psychological vulnerabilities related to conformity and submission to authority. Species that have strong traditions of independence and personal autonomy are much more resistant to conversion. That's why they test their enemies first, Crystal Singer Valen added. The advanced forces don't just gather military intelligence. They study the psychological and cultural characteristics of potential victims. Species that show too much resistance are often marked for complete elimination rather than conversion. Reynolds felt a chill as she realized the implications. You're saying that our resistance to their advanced forces may have marked humanity for destruction rather than conversion? It is possible, Commander Thex acknowledged, but it is also what gives us hope. A species that will fight to remain free is a species that might actually win this war. As the alien delegates prepared to return to their ships, Marcus rolled down his sleeve, covering the tattoo that had started this entire chain of events. Reynolds realized that she was witnessing the beginning of something unprecedented in galactic history. A true alliance between species that had learned to value freedom above security. Captain Reynolds, Korvac said as he prepared to leave, Marcus Chen has proven himself worthy of our trust through great sacrifice and dedication. We hope that you and your people will prove worthy of his example. We will, Reynolds replied, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. As the alien ships departed, returning to their secret bases to begin preparing for the battles ahead, Reynolds stood beside Marcus on the observation deck and watched the stars with new understanding. The tattoo, she said finally, it's not just about what you've done, it's about what you've become. Marcus nodded. It's about understanding that some things are worth more than survival. That freedom, dignity, and the right to choose your own path are worth fighting for, even when the odds seem impossible. And now we all have to prove that we understand that. Now we all have to prove that humanity deserves to survive not just as a species, but as a free civilization capable of standing with others who share our values. Captain Reynolds looked at the tattoo on Marcus's arm one more time, seeing it not as a mark of his individual service, but as a symbol of the alliance that might just save them all. In the distance, human and alien ships began moving into new formations, preparing for a war that would determine the future of freedom in the galaxy. The real battle was just beginning, but for the first time since the conflict started, they were not facing it alone. And that, Reynolds realized, might make all the difference.